Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here to close out this meeting. We had a fantastic workshop. Hopefully you all learned a lot about the science behind the generic program and some of the ways that it makes an extremely positive impact on our review processes, on the development of your products that you submit to FDA, and on access to generic versions for the American public. The generic program won't exist, especially for complex generics, without a strong scientific foundation. If you didn't have that, then it's not clear, well, what studies do you have to do? You'd fall back to a situation where let's just repeat the studies that brand products did. And that pathway is not going to lead to efficient access to generic products. And I think you saw throughout this workshop the way that the scientific foundations of the generic program are being built up and lead to more efficient product access. On the first day, you saw looking at in vitro release methods for complex suspensions and the scientific work that helps you develop those approaches. You heard about topical products and the Q3 approaches and how they're taking over from the clinical endpoint studies and being the more appropriate pathway for products. You heard a session on inhalation products. Again, not very many generics for the inhalation products, but you saw the progress toward inhalation products based on PK and in vitro studies instead of clinical endpoint studies. We hope this will lead to a surge in interest in generic companies in developing inhalation products that meet the needs of the American public. Again, a huge area of opportunity for you in the generic industry created by our scientific work. And then you also heard about drug-device combination products and some of the challenges in developing those types of complex generics. We don't have access to generic products unless you all in the industry submit applications. And I think you heard today in the early morning talks, a lot of examples of some of the things that go on during the review process for some of these complex ANDA products. And hopefully this gives you the insight as to how to make your submissions better, but also that you ought to be investing in development programs for these complex generics because you see that it's possible. You heard about long-acting injectables. I think 10 years ago, can I make a generic for that? It seems impossible. Now it's not just possible, it's done. And if you're not doing it, you're probably falling behind. Same thing with, you heard a talk on peptides, right? 10 years ago, oh, this is a recombinant source RLD. Generic's not possible. The only thing I can do is a B2 application. That's not true anymore. Again, another huge opportunity just in time for what we know is now the biggest part of the pharmaceutical market for generic competition to be active in that. If we didn't build the scientific foundations to change how we're thinking, then we wouldn't have the possibility of generic versions for all the GLP-1 agonists. So again, huge foundation. If you're in the generic industry, keeping up with these are how you plan and establish your business to be competitive in a new environment and provide the things that the American public wants. They want access to generic versions of all of these complex products. And the bigger the impact the products are, the more that they want and need those generic products. And this is, the huge value that you in the generic industry create. We at FDA recognize that, and we constantly try to develop processes, procedures, way to interact with us to make that process more efficient. You heard about our model-informed evidence meeting pilot, right, as well as other ways you can interact with us. And finally, today you heard about the M13 updates. So the scientific force toward more efficient bioequivalence, not just limited to complex products. Even the commodity tablets and capsules, we continue to try to make that process much more efficient. And I think, look at what the impact of that is. Look at that forecast list that Lei mentioned. 800 PSGs tells you what study is going to be removed. I would think you're going to get a lot of questions about that, but this is, again, a huge restructuring. If you think about the benefit of that, that's probably 400 Fed BE studies that last year you would have submitted, next year you don't have to. That's, I don't know how much the studies, I know how much PK studies cost me, I don't know how much they cost you, but that's hundreds of millions of dollars in savings for the generic industry. And that's not just savings next year, right? That's saving sort of every year going forward that you're producing and maintaining these products that are essential to just the everyday use. I mean, they're commodity products, but commodity product is still making a huge public health impact. People take commodity products every day for blood pressure medications, cholesterol-lowering medications, huge public health impacts from high-quality commodity products, and we continue to make that process easier and more straightforward to make those products and ensure the supply of that. So we hope that you take that money that you save on those BE studies and you can invest it into product quality, reliability, and ensuring continued access to these products. And with that, this is a fantastic opportunity for you all in the industry, in the room and online, to get in touch and hear about these innovative approaches and what's changing, so you can keep ahead of the, all of these things are going to have significant impacts on your business processes and scientific developments going forward. This is a fantastic place to keep up with that. And I do want to thank the people that really made this possible, especially the scientific organizing committee. So we have one, I don't think Wen Lei is here. I want to recognize her as the chair of our scientific committee. I want to recognize Lei as our executive sponsor to keep everything working, and also recognize Maria as leading the project management activities on that. But we also had a large committee of scientific experts. You saw many of them as the panelists or the leads session moderators for today. Just recognizing a few of them, recognizing some of our project managers, Irfan and Karen, recognizing Jan, Andrew Babiskin, Deanna Vivian, Ki Ren, Susan Levine, Fallon Smalls, Sheila Rajesh, Ahmed Zidan, all of these people from OGD and OPQ who are members of our technical committee who really helped put together the programming, recruit the speakers, organize the topics, help develop, moderate the questions. So we had a great discussion. So we want to thank all of those people. So join me in thanking them. And with that, I'll turn it over to our SBIA staff to close out the meeting and tell you how to get all the final benefits from this meeting and everything you need.